a debate relating to the vesting of lands and the Barbados Tourism Marketing, Inc. for the purposes of tourism development in Bay Street in the constituency of the city of Bridgetown. And I'm very happy indeed to be part of this debate because I remember vividly as a member of the opposition in the last parliament when this matter would have been debated in this Honourable House. I gave my support to this project then, and I did so with the proviso that the relevant requirements from town planning and so on were satisfied. And I supported the project then, as I do so certainly now, because that support really was driven by a conviction. And it was a conviction that really saw the desire for me as the person representing the city of Bridgetown, and as a person who resided at one point in time and who grew up in the city of Bridgetown, to see the capital city of this country being revived, revitalized, re-energized in a way that would benefit not only the residents of the city of Bridgetown, but the people of Barbados. And that was my desire then, that was my wish, and it certainly is now. And I recall having to sit through numerous debates and budgetary speeches and proposals in which it was often said that Bridgetown was going to come alive because of the level of development that was going to take place within my beloved city. And each time I heard an utterance, I became very disappointed because at the end of it all, Bridgetown remained the same. Bridgetown remained then a place where there were perhaps about 115, I think that was the count that I did, commercial spaces that were either for rent or for sale. And there could have been no doubt then, and there is none now, that the city was indeed dying, and that the city really needed a new lease on life. And for me, that was the most important thing. And I went where my heart and my conviction sent me in terms of supporting the construction of the Hyatt Hotel, and indeed any other hotel. The more, the merrier, the better it would be for the people of the city and Barbados. And I say that to say also, Mr. Speaker, that if you are a youngster residing in Wellington Street of the city of Bridgetown, it really does not matter which government it is that built the Hyatt. If you are a resident of Queen Street or Dunlow Lane or Bay Street, it does not matter who the developer is that develops and constructs the Hyatt. What is important to the people is whether or not such a development is going to be done in such a way that it embraces the communities surrounding the development, and that it includes and involves the people who live in these communities, and that it does not alienate or isolate them from the development that is taking place. And I indeed was very happy, and I'm certainly happy today to see that we are inching closer to the realization of this desire, this quest to redefine Bridgetown. Because I believe that the capital city of this nation is the heartbeat of the nation, and Bridgetown is a microcosm of the wider Barbadian society. And I believe with the designation of a World Heritage Site, Bridgetown and its garrison, that certainly the city should be looking better than it does at this point in time, and that the level of commercial and social activity taking place in the city ought to have seen a significant increase, having gained that designation several years ago. I've attended meetings dealing with the redevelopment of Bridgetown under the current administration. I've participated in some of the discussions, and I was indeed very, very happy to learn of the plans to deal with Bridgetown and its environs in terms of bringing a level of commercial and business activity to the city that would redound to the benefit of those persons who I have the pleasure and the honor of representing. And so the Hyatt Hotel must not be seen in isolation, and in fact, the construction of the Hyatt Hotel, whenever that starts, and I hope that it will be very soon, for me, is going to be the catalyst that brings about the development of the city of Bridgetown. And so I am confident, having attended a number of the meetings relating to the project, that certainly on this occasion, that the people of the city of Bridgetown will benefit and must benefit from this project and all other projects in the city of Bridgetown, certainly under my watch as the Member of Parliament. And so I look forward to the day when the first brick is laid, when the work starts on this project, so that we can begin to see some sort of realization of not only the desires of the Member of Parliament, but the expectations and the hopes of the people who live in the city of Bridgetown. And if that development at the moment is going to be anchored, that is the development of the city, by the start of this particular project, this makes it even more important for me as a Member of Parliament. But the development, when it takes place, as I said earlier, must, and I'm happy to say that the Honourable Minister of Finance and Prime Minister shares this view, that the people must be involved in all aspects of the project. And I look forward to the day when Bridgetown can be redeveloped in a physical sense, but that this redevelopment would include the redevelopment from Baxter's Road to Nelson Street, bringing these two communities to life, because they once provided a level of social activity in this country that the people in Oistins are now trying to catch up with and to emulate. And the history of Bridgetown lends to what is being determined in terms of the direction Bridgetown should go with its development. And it is only fair that those who will suffer the greatest discomfort through noise and dust and traffic benefit from the project in all aspects of the said project. And I say to my people in the city of Bridgetown, as I have said before, out of this honourable chamber, opportunities will be provided for the people to be able to gain some employment. But that employment must not be restricted to the construction phase of the project. And so every effort is being made to facilitate the level and the variety of training that is going to be required to get persons up to the state where they can get jobs once the hotel has been constructed and is operational. And that is part of the vision going forward for the development not of the city in terms of the commercial sense of the city, but the human resources, the people who live within the city of Bridgetown. And so I'm duty-bound to support this particular resolution and to hope that it would come to fruition in as short a period of time as possible. But whilst this project, as I said, is part of a bigger project to redefine and to redevelop the city of Bridgetown, it is also part of the growth strategy of this government that I have the honor to represent. And I want to say to the Honourable Leader of the Opposition and to those who may be thinking that this government has not articulated, documented any growth strategy, that I think, and I sympathize with them in a sense. I sympathize with them because it is obvious to me that what they're looking at in terms of growth, they're looking at the growth of a plant or a tree, the end product. But before you can get to that stage, you have to plant the seeds. And we have been planting the seeds for economic growth in this country for the past 12 months, Mr. Deputy Speaker. And what am I talking about? In agriculture, the programs that this government have been putting in place in terms of the feed program and also trying to facilitate young persons in particular who would not normally be involved in agriculture, into getting themselves involved in agriculture by providing lands so that they could ply their trade. That is part of the developmental process and the growth process. And it is tied also to the development of the tourism product, a product that going forward will see the utilization of more Barbadian crops and products into that tourist industry. So that in itself is growth. We recently passed, or rather we included, medicinal cannabis products on the drug formulary to provide a level of care to those persons under prescription for whom other drugs have simply not been working. But that is only a touch. That is only a piece of the pie, Mr. Deputy Speaker. The intent of the government of Barbados is not to remain a bystander in terms of medicinal marijuana industry. And we do not intend to sit back like we did with sugar, where we produce the raw material, we got the sugar, shipped it out to be refined, then to buy it back. We intend to be a major player in this industry. And the Ministry of Agriculture has been tasked with the responsibility to develop this industry, which is expected to yield economic growth for Barbados and for Barbadians. The Ministry of the Blue Economy, that ministry was created for a specific purpose, in order to generate revenue, also growth through the maritime industry and blue economy. And those seeds are being planted because this is a new ministry. And at the moment they are mapping out the areas where they will venture in order to generate the growth that people are expecting and that the country demands. And I'm very happy as to what that ministry has been doing so far. And I am quite sure in time to come that people will see that we certainly have been planting the seeds of growth in terms of our blue economy. The new tourism, the new markets for tourism and the new avenues for tourism investment, that is also another area of growth of which the Hyatt Hotel will be but a small, even though important part. And that is interesting because you would recall, Mr. Deputy Speaker, that the Honourable Minister of Finance and Honourable Prime Minister stated on more than one occasion, and I happened to be present on several of those occasions when the Minister of Finance, the Prime Minister, made it clear that Barbados is to become a hub and a center of excellence for medical education and medical tourism. And that is ongoing. And there are some projects, some which have started and others which are being discussed at this point in time, that will bring growth to Barbados, and that certainly will put Barbados even higher on the map in terms of Barbados being a hub or a center of excellence in terms of medical education and tourism. But perhaps the greatest part of the growth strategy and the one that perhaps a lot of people will tend not to see in terms of planting the seed of growth is in the area of human resources. This government has been focusing significantly on training, the training and retraining of Barbadians to be able not only to lead the charge in terms of new avenues of economic growth, but to be able to benefit significantly from that growth. And that is something that is ongoing. It is tied also to the trust loans. That is part of the growth strategy as well. But it is not growth strategy in terms of the larger and the usual players in this economy. It is the average Barbadian, the person, the young people, even the older ones who would never have had an opportunity to own their own business, no matter how small. They would not have had the opportunity to do so without the advent of the trust loans. And that too is part of the growth strategy. And so there can be no doubt whatsoever as to where we are going with growth in this country, and certainly where we are going in terms of the redevelopment of the Bridgetown area. And I want to spend a few minutes on that. I believe, Mr. Deputy Speaker, with the construction of a Hyatt Hotel on Bay Street, and so close to the areas of Nelson Street, Wellington Street, and so on, and given the level of activity, entertainment that used to take place on Bay Street and within the Nelson Street and the surrounding districts, that Hyatt Hotel will provide the impetus for the persons in those areas under the leadership of their Member of Parliament to elevate their business enterprises to a level that would allow them to benefit in a real way from the traffic that's going to be going through the Hyatt Hotel. I also believe, and I'm happy, and I thank the Honourable Minister of Tourism for the idea, or the realization of the idea, if you like, of what is happening at Pelican Village, and I hope that it will not end with crop over, and that it could become a regular occurrence, weekend occurrence, so that Pelican Village also can come alive. I also believe, Mr. Deputy Speaker, with all of the hotel infrastructure that will be developed within the Bridgetown and the general greater Bridgetown area, that we must also look at, and I have had some discussions with the Minister of Tourism in this regard. This is something that I've been working on certainly in my mind for a long time, and I only had to put it on the back burner because we had some anxieties within some of our communities that we need to really deal with. But the question of community tourism, where the visitor experience is expanded to include village life, village culture, those sorts of things, those are things that can redound not only to the benefit of the people who live in the communities, but it can help to enhance the tourism or tourist experience in this country. I want to see the day when tourists go through the Orleans and the Bayland and other areas and be able to go and get some roast breadfruit and roast fish and roast corn, and to see what rum shop life is like, and to be able to play some road tennis. And in rural Barbados as well. And I know that that is a vision that is shared by the Minister of Tourism, and it certainly is the vision of the Member of Parliament for the city. And there's no way, or rather let me say that there's no way that you should have any anxiety in terms of the current tourism product and what we are hoping to achieve in terms of our villages and our communities. But at the same time, Mr. Deputy Speaker, we must not leave the people behind. A city is a dead city if it does not have people living in it. And so, I certainly welcome the fact that we, one day, coming soon, will have visitors residing in hotels in the city of Bridgetown, and that as a result of this development, we will be able to improve the living conditions of the people in the communities in the city of Bridgetown. And so I give this my wholehearted support. And the leader of the opposition would have made a point or remark in terms of disclosure. I share some of that. I share some of that because I did so when I was in opposition. And I share some of it now because I know that at the meetings that I attended with the developers and the Prime Minister and her investment team, that I made a few comments, and the Prime Minister, the Honourable Prime Minister, gave instructions that town hall meetings must be held by the developer with the communities in the area where the development is supposed to take place. And I give that undertaking not only to the Honourable Chamber, but to the leader, the Honourable Leader of the Opposition, and certainly to the people who reside in the communities that will be impacted by this development, that I am going to speak to the developer to ensure that the people know exactly what the plans are for this development that is going to be so close to their communities. And so, Mr. Deputy Speaker, I repeat that I think that this is a vesting of land for a very, very good purpose. It's a purpose that will not only benefit my people in this city, but it will benefit this entire country. And I know, based on what I have heard, based on the plans I have seen, and the designs that I have seen, that this project is going to be the start and the true start of the revitalization of my city of Bridgetown. With those few words, I'm obliged.
I'm obliged. Member for St. Philip West.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. I too want to support this vesting of lands. I think the Honourable Member for the City almost said it all. This is really the beginning of that revitalization, that transformation of the city. You know, sometimes I wonder if people really understand how important Bridgetown as a historical city has been, not only to Barbados itself, but to the entire region and, I dare say, North America. And to see the state that our city has found itself in, especially over the last 10 years, has really been very disappointing. Mr. Speaker, I was a part and parcel of creating a song called Bridgetown when we celebrated 375th anniversary of this wonderful city that we find ourselves in. And in that song, it spoke of the commercial aspects of it. It spoke of the culture which was cultivated by the people who were in the city. It talked about the tragedy of the city with the fires and all of these different things. And this city having the designation, the UNESCO designation, speaks volumes about the people itself, not just the people in the city, but the entire country. And if you travel and you go to places, you get a place called the Big Apple. It tells you a lot about that part of the United States. And cities play a very important role in being able to give that national identity at the level of the country itself and at the level of the city itself, what it is known for. So bringing this hotel into the city at this particular point in time could be only, in my mind, seen as a master stroke. The Honourable Member for the City talked about the jobs that are going to be created under the construction of the actual hotel itself. But then there's also the spin-off things that are going to happen. Yes, when it is finished, you will have to employ people and other things. But when we start to talk about the creative economy now, this hotel is going to be able for us now to build out the city even more. When you talk about places where vendors can now have access to persons who come to visit in the city itself, the thriving businesses will begin. He talked about the entertainment will get a lift. I mean, there's so many things that will spin off from this simple vesting of this land to start this project, that I don't even know if it's possible for us in 2019 to actually see into the future what else can spin off from this in terms of our development of the city. So for me, this is really one of those events that is going to mark this administration's tenure at this particular point in time and going forward. What I don't understand, though, is how so often you can hear persons, and I like to think that sometimes they speak because, well, they might not understand what is going on, or in some other reason, sometimes people find it very, and I want to choose my words very carefully, but they find this joy in being able to just oppose things. So you hear the government is doing this, so oppose. You hear government is not doing this, even that you oppose. So I find it interesting, especially when I listen to the call-in programs and read some of the things that I see in the newspapers. It tells me that oftentimes one has to, as we use this term all the time, stay the course, because you cannot see for everyone else. But there are some things that you will figure that are so simplistic that people will get it from the beginning and understand that it doesn't matter, and the Honourable member for the city spoke about it, and I really want to reiterate this particular point. It doesn't matter which political party executes a project. If the project is a good project, it is a good project. It doesn't matter who does it. But the point is that this is something that is going to benefit the country as a whole. So that when I hear the criticisms, I often wonder, well, where are our loyalties? Are our loyalties to small issues, or are our loyalties as Barbadians to the overall benefit of the country? And this project, I find nothing that I can think about that will cause people any problems at all. I mean, we've talked about planning gains, and I think you've heard people debate that in this house for a little while now, talking about what are the things that developers are going to be required to do when big projects like these go off. And so the minister talked about having things done that the persons in Vine Street and Nelson Street and Pondside and all these other areas can benefit from. And I'm sure that if you had a chance to speak to those residents, to get their feelings as to, how they see this being able to impact their lives, I am sure that they would give us so many examples of how it will improve their lot that we ourselves sitting here as MPs may not even fathom half of the things that they would probably tell us about. So this is the first step. The first step, invest in that land, and that is where your journey begins. Every journey begins with the first step. And I see this as the first step in us being able to be, again, like I said before, a part of that transformation of the city. And I spoke earlier about the history of Bridgetown. When you look back and you start to do research and you realize that this city that we take for granted, that a lot of decisions that affected places in North America, South America, and the rest of the Caribbean, a lot of those decisions were made right here in this Bridgetown, this city. When you go back, and then there's some things that were not so nice, but I always have to talk about it because the history is the history. When you talk about the transatlantic slave trade, Bridgetown, the city, was an integral part of that particular part of our history. Now, some people might not like it, some people don't want to face it, but the truth is the truth. This place was a hub. It was a center for that transatlantic slave trade. And I'm saying that if it could have been that, you had, I guess, Honourable Minister, that we can say that there were tourists that were forced. They didn't come on their own behalf. They were forced to come here. I'm telling you, on a long-haul journey. But here we are now providing an opportunity for persons who want to willfully come to this beautiful island and enjoy all that it has to offer and to enjoy being in this wonderful city. You have people inside and outside of these chambers, quarreling. I find this hard to comprehend. You know, and I always go back to my grandmother, God rest her in her grave. You know, she always used to say to me one time when we get into conversations like this about how some people behave, she would always say, Johnny boy, there are some people who are bright, but they're not shining. And it always stuck with me that whenever you find a situation where it is, that persons can look at something that is so obvious, that is so simple, that is so, it is just a thing that you can see that is going to be beneficial to a lot of people, and then try to just tear it apart and find only the small things to gnaw at and chip away at and chip out. It leaves you to wonder what is happening in our country. Where do our loyalties lie? What is it that we want? And we are at a juncture now where any investments that we can get are welcomed. We've come through probably the bleakest and the darkest period of this country's existence. And people seem to forget. Or as one very prominent minister would have said, they have short memories. But this is not the time for short memories. This is the time to hold on to these memories to ensure that we don't ever go back to that place again. Yeah. And so while some people find it, I guess, interesting to stoke these fires of, I don't even know why we call it, but these fires of adversity, I guess that's the best word I could come up with at this point in time. Over and over and over and over, without looking at the broader picture, that regardless of who you are, and let me get down to the nitty-gritty of it, BD, NDP, Christian, Muslim, black, white, it doesn't matter. There are some things that as a human being, you have to be able to see the good in it. The development of the Hayat is one such thing. And so, Mr. Speaker, I want my fellow Barbadians, I want them to begin to shut out the noises. Stop. Be still. And think for yourself. The newspaper is filled with stuff. Social media is filled with stuff. On the streets, you can hear people stoking these fires with careless talk. But at the end of the day, when I look around this chamber, all of the persons I see sitting in here, and I'm going to say it again, all of the people I see sitting in here are persons whom I consider to have the best interests of this country at heart. If it were not so, Mr. Speaker, I would not be here. There would be no reason for me to be here. Because in my life, I do not make decisions to get into groups or any fraternities or anything with people whom I do not understand, I do not trust, and I do not know what their intentions are. This is why I am a member of this political party and not another one. And so when I tell you that I support this particular resolution, I am looking into the future. I am looking 15, 20, 30 years down the road. Some of us might not be here, but that's not the important thing. The important thing is the decisions that we make today in this chamber are going to be made with the best interest of generations to come. And as you start to talk about the build-out, imagine, if you will, Mr. Speaker, that in 20 years' time, after the Hyatt is built, that some little boy or girl from Vine Street, some little boy or girl from Nelson Street may very well turn around to be the general manager of that same Hyatt. Some little boy or girl may be the person owning the transportation that moves people through and fro from that same Hyatt. Some little boy or girl may be the proprietor of an entertainment establishment, of a store. This is so many possibilities from one simple act. That's it, Minister. Infinite possibilities. From one little act of being able to get this resolution passed and get this project on the road. And so if there's nothing else, I want people to have, where this government is concerned, where this project is concerned, and the many other projects that are going to be coming, is to have hope, is to believe that what could not have been done in 10 years is being done as I speak. That the road to recovery is one step at a time. And these are the small steps that will lead to big, great gains and to a much brighter future for the people of this country. You've heard the Prime Minister over and over and over talk about you have to feel a little pain. But the only thing that she doesn't say, and I guess it's because she's a really nice lady, she's different to me. She's very different to me. God, I try hard not to get started in here. But the point is, the pain that people are feeling, we ain't got nothing to do with it. Not a boy in here. Cause it. But we got to fix it. And people must not forget that. So that when you're going to quarrel, or when you're going to write letters to the editor, or when you're going to come outside and stand up with a placard, you got to remember who put you in the problems that you're in. And you got to remember why you went to the polls and voted the way you did. Because you wanted a different set of people to solve the problems. And to put you back on a track that you're accustomed to having. Now everybody in this house knows, and everybody outside knows, that for years, regardless of which political party it was, Barbadians had a certain standard of living. And for the very first time in our lives, we were reduced to nothing. To nothing. And what hurts me the most is that the people who reduced us to nothing have the audacity, and as my grandmother would say, the gumption, to be in the newspapers, to be on calling programs, to be walking about the road and telling people, oh, this body can't do this, and the next person can't do this, and the government policies are no good. But explain to me. Explain to me where we get all this talk from now. We had 10 years to show what you could do, and you did. You showed that you could do absolutely nothing. In fact, let me rephrase that. You showed that you could do absolutely nothing right. Yeah? You showed how much damage you could do. In fact, every time I think of what has happened to this country, you know, there was a dance move many years ago that used to ask, how low can you go? But this country went down so low, it couldn't even get back up. And so when I hear this noise, this noise all the time, noise, somebody has to be bold enough to tell them it's time to shut up. You had your chance. You did what you had to do, because understanding who you are, I now recognize that you had to do what you had to do because that's all you can do. So I can't blame you for anything. I'm just horrified that you have this bold sort of approach to having all the solutions now, when you had all the time on your hand to put Barbados on a different trajectory. And so, Mr. Speaker, I just want to say, once again, I support this resolution, and I look forward to seeing that project started, because I know very well the benefits that are going to accrue to this country, and especially to the wonderful city of Bridgetown. I oblige you, sir.
Oblige. Member for St. Michael West Central.
West Central.
West Central.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. I rise to join this debate in support of the resolution before this honourable chamber. Mr. Speaker, the vesting of lands in the BTAI, and also to allow the granting of a license for the use of a private bridge, Mr. Speaker. But, Mr. Speaker, I would like to make the point that the honourable member for St. Andrew, in his lead-off, made reference to the fact that the BTII, they have a mandate, and the mandate is to ensure the orderly development of a portfolio of tourism-related properties on its own or in a joint venture, and to work with the private sector or to work with the public sector. And, Mr. Speaker, I think at the outset, I think we all agree that that mandate has not changed. That was the mandate of the former administration. It is the mandate of the BTAI under this administration, so it has not changed. Mr. Speaker, the hotel plant, and effectively by vesting the lands, will allow for the building out of tourism infrastructure in Barbados. And as we understand it, the hotel plant will straddle the former Harbour Police Station and the bridge as well, along to the Detco Motors Seaside property. But, Mr. Speaker, I believe that it is instructive that we recognize that all we've settled today is an orderly development of Barbados's tourism and the orderly development of infrastructure in Barbados, Mr. Speaker, so that you have a situation where the developer will have to pay an annual license fee, and that the license fee will be subject to review every 5 years. And Mr. Speaker, the arrangement even goes on to say that the developer should be responsible for the cost of the construction and maintenance of the bridge. In other words, these things will happen to help build out our infrastructure at no cost to the government of Barbados. And I better define that: at no cost to the taxpayers of Barbados, Mr. Speaker. So what will we have? If you have to construct and maintain a bridge, there's construction costs. There are going to be jobs, Mr. Speaker, in the construction, and thereafter, Mr. Speaker, you will have jobs to maintain the bridge. So that the developer is also, the developer will have responsibility for the relocation of the St. John Ambulance Brigade from the corner of Wellington Street. And that's why I make the point that there will be orderly development within the city of Bridgetown. So that I have no objections, Mr. Speaker. But there's an issue, Mr. Speaker, that the Leader of the Opposition raised, and he's right to ask questions. We have a right to respond. And I often say that I will cut my craft. The more questions he asks, sir, I will answer. But the issue about the divergence of a position held in opposition, that we, this party, held in opposition, versus that held in government. But, Mr. Speaker, I will have to respond, because I'm now part of the government, sir. But, Mr. Speaker, I think that the issue here has to do with the fact that there's no change in the cabinet position. As I understand it, the cabinet position that would rest before, because, you know, you have officers who prepare documents for a cabinet, and there's no change. Mr. Speaker, if we ask the question whether or not proper planning permission was sought under this Barbados Labour Party administration, then of course we can answer in the affirmative, so that a Barbados Labour Party government, and certainly a Barbados Labour Party cabinet, would not go and approve a project or to agree to build out tourism in Barbados unless, Mr. Speaker, there was proper planning. And, Mr. Speaker, there's nothing before me to tell me otherwise that this government, that I have the honor of being a part, Mr. Speaker, can absolutely say that we have not followed any planning, improper planning policies, Mr. Speaker. We have followed the planning rules. And, Mr. Speaker, that set aside, there were also issues regarding impact analysis and so on. Mr. Speaker, the honourable member for the city of Bridgetown is in here with us today. He spoke before, Mr. Speaker, and I know that the honourable member, he always looks out for his people in the city. Yeah. And I have not heard the honourable member in this debate saying that the people in the city are unhappy with this development, Mr. Speaker. They haven't said that there were serious concerns with this development, Mr. Speaker. And like I said, the honourable member for the city of Bridgetown represents his people well, sir. But he has not voiced any concerns. And he is the voice of the people in the city. He keeps his ears to the ground in the city. So minus that, Mr. Speaker, I don't understand why perhaps a view will be held that there is a divergence of opinion. Mr. Speaker, planning permission was not circumvented. The people were consulted, as I understand, and as a result of that, Mr. Speaker, I can honestly say that we don't have a problem. And if we had a problem, Mr. Speaker, the honourable member for St. Andrew would have brought the issues here, and perhaps those issues would have been dealt with before they got here. So, Mr. Speaker, I am satisfied that there's nothing untoward, not that I'm saying that the Leader of the Opposition said that, but there's nothing untoward in respect of the view or the position that we held in opposition versus where we are today in government. We believe in the orderly development of town and country planning, Mr. Speaker. We believe in the orderly development of tourism, sir. And therefore, I understand, Mr. Speaker, that we will have to do it. I'm not saying you said, I am saying, Mr. Speaker, that this side believes in the orderly development in this country. But, Mr. Speaker, I know that there are substantial benefits to be gained as a result of the development ahead. But I really want to speak, sir, to the issue of a growth path. Mr. Speaker, we came to office, and we all agree, I don't think anybody in this chamber would disagree, that we had no choice but to correct the path we were on, Mr. Speaker. Because that path, Mr. Speaker, would have led us to a point of no return and immense hardship for the people of this country. We inherited, we asked for the job, but, Mr. Speaker, we elected to change course, Mr. Speaker. We implemented policies to stabilize the economy. We had to effectively restructure the balance sheet, Mr. Speaker. And yes, we had to restructure our debt. And, Mr. Speaker, I've said it before. By restructuring the debt, Barbadians were saved. When I say Barbadians, Barbadian taxpayers will save over $700 million in interest payments per year, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, can you imagine what it would be like if this government did not restructure the debt, but that the very people, Mr. Speaker, who now have to pay taxes, sir, and we were pleased to say that we are even changing the tax roll, as they will see later in this year. Those persons, Mr. Speaker, the taxpayers, would have been called upon to shell out more than $700 million in additional taxes. Mr. Speaker, this Barbados Labour Party government protected the taxpayers in this country through the process of debt restructuring, Mr. Speaker. But we had to do it. And Mr. Speaker, wants to stabilize the Barbados economy. The next area is obviously activity. And we accept that activity will drive growth, Mr. Speaker. And I want to give you maybe a couple of examples. We have Ross University, Mr. Speaker. Say they have a student roll of 1,000. Don't take into account the administrative staff, Mr. Speaker. I say to you, the fact that we got Ross University Barbados alone, Mr. Speaker, would have accounted, sir, in my estimation, to more than equivalent of more than 400 bed nights in Barbados. Mr. Speaker, annualize that. Annualize 400 bed nights in Barbados per night. Even if you go on the basis that they're going to take a break and some of them return to the United States, they are still paying rent, Mr. Speaker. And I did a quick calculation. Even if you shared, if 3 students shared one house or one pool of accommodation, Mr. Speaker, this country would have benefited in excess of $21 million in housing alone, Mr. Speaker. That's about $10 million US dollars coming into the Barbados economy. 10 million, sir. Sir, if you want to go further, Mr. Speaker, we can even talk about, Mr. Speaker, the subsidiary services that will emerge, Mr. Speaker, because one thing about a university, so a foreign-based university, they have to bring inflows, and by inflows, they're bringing foreign currency to Barbados, Mr. Speaker. They're creating, and they have created jobs for people. They've created activity in Barbados, Mr. Speaker. And I say to you that activity is a critical, plays a substantial part in the growth of any economy, Mr. Speaker. And that is but one example, sir. Sir, I can go on, and I can tell you, for example, in the tourism sector, there are ongoing capital expenditure programs in the tourism sector. Again, that is activity that we will measure whenever they come to a point where they have to account. Sir, that is an area of economic activity that will continue to drive growth in the Barbados economy, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I can also tell you that there are several projects in the pipelines in Barbados. I am aware, Mr. Speaker, that the minister responsible for town planning was walking, touring facilities and making certain inspections, sir. And the Honourable Minister, the Prime Minister of Barbados, walked with the town planning team into the late hours of the night, Mr. Speaker, working on behalf of Barbadians. And you know why she was doing that, sir? She was doing that to unlock all the projects in the pipeline so that we can have more economic activity generated in Barbados, Mr. Speaker. And that is what will happen, sir. Mr. Speaker, and the decision, sir, to ensure that you have a low tax regime, unheard of any part of the region thus far, where you lowered your tax rate to 5%, Mr. Speaker. You understand the potential, sir, for reinvestment in the Barbados economy, sir? It is going to unlock, Mr. Speaker, and I'm confident in that, sir. And that's why I made the point, yes, we need growth. I agree with it entirely. But, Mr. Speaker, we're unlocking growth. And I've cited but a few examples, sir, because I know I have to watch my time, sir, so I wouldn't run afoul of the chair, sir. But, Mr. Speaker, building out of tourism capacity in Barbados, sir, we'll see a new phase. The issue, and it's a question that we've always concerned ourselves with, Mr. Speaker, and certainly I have. And I always ask the question, do we gain and do we utilize or do we use our land, sir, for the best economic value, Mr. Speaker? And you may ask me why I say that. You go north, Mr. Speaker, you have a police station, a police complex on the water side, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, you probably you go south now, Mr. Speaker, and you see a hardware store, sir, on coastal lands, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, you go further around the curb and the stretch, as you call it, Mr. Speaker, and I always ask myself, are we benefiting, are we getting the best possible use of the land, and are we getting the best possible economic returns? Mr. Speaker, by unlocking the lands, Mr. Speaker, nearby, in that general area, I call it the stretch, Mr. Speaker, along with the plans that the government would have unveiled based on the Tourism Investment Conference, will create opportunities for us to build out our tourism sector. But we can't build out our tourism sector, Mr. Speaker, if we continue to allow derelict buildings, Mr. Speaker, to occupy good lands that we could convert to proper economic benefit and also to give Barbadians a benefit. And Mr. Speaker, by doing what we're proposing to do, sir, in this resolution, will unlock future opportunities for Barbadians and the people of the city of Bridgetown, Mr. Speaker. They will, I've said it in here before, I can imagine a Bridgetown with cafes, Mr. Speaker. In fact, this is perhaps the first time in a post-independent Barbados that Barbados, under a Barbados Labour Party administration, another first, sir, will have a hotel in the city of Bridgetown, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, can you understand what the development of the hotel does for a city, sir? Imagine the city of Bridgetown with a hotel. And I've said it before, that the investment plan for the area will dovetail with our development for urban Barbados and the city of Bridgetown. And I make no apology, sir, and I repeat it. There are too many derelict buildings occupying prime beachfront land in this country that can be used, in my judgment, to develop and to create economic opportunities for this country. And it falls to this Barbados Labour Party government, Mr. Speaker, Mr. Deputy Speaker. It falls to this Barbados Labour Party government to unlock that potential, Mr. Speaker, to make the best use of our economic land, sir, for the development of the people of Barbados, Mr. Speaker, and that is how we intend to win back jobs for the people of Barbados. Mr. Speaker, the higher investment, and you will always have developers and you will always have investors, but they will have to conform to the rules of this land, Mr. Speaker. And I understand it, Mr. Speaker, that the high investment would perhaps be in the vicinity of maybe 200 million. Some suggest 240 million, Mr. Speaker. So you will have jobs in the construction sector. You will have, Mr. Speaker, maybe 500 jobs based on the size of the project. And post-construction, Mr. Speaker, you will have sustainable jobs. And I forecast, based on the size of the project, they will have at least 300 full-time jobs in the facility of that. Mr. Speaker, Deputy Speaker, and the brand as proposed, I believe it is Hyatt-centric, Mr. Speaker. The brand is a well-known brand. I'm not making a plug for them, because they don't compete in this jurisdiction yet. But, Mr. Speaker, it is a well-known and established brand. And with an established brand, you will also have some marketing benefits, Mr. Speaker, that would accrue and redound to the interests of Barbados. Mr. Speaker, the concept of a bridge, sir, is very fascinating. And as I looked at the resolution and I heard the Honourable Member St. Andrew leading off, and I thought about the concept of a bridge, sir. Mr. Speaker, can you imagine what a bridge can do? It could create opportunities inland as well. And you may say, well, perhaps he's flying a kite, but I'm not, sir. I am not. Let me tell you why. There are hotels in Barbados who are not on the beach strip, or the beachfront, as some people refer to it, Mr. Speaker, but they operate across a street. And Mr. Speaker, if you have a bridge that connects people from what you would call inland to the beach stretch, Mr. Speaker, that will create opportunities, Mr. Speaker, for across the street from the beach line. And I say to you, sir, it is not a prospect proposal, but if you were to go prospect, Mr. Speaker, and I believe it will be in the constituency for the honourable member for St. James Central, if you go to prospect, you will see a luxurious field and luxurious accommodation complemented with a spa, sir. Right? With the finest and culinary delights, sir. You will find on the opposite side, Mr. Speaker, and it is as well populated as the beachfront, Mr. Speaker. And if I go further north to St. Michael and remaining in St. James Central, sir, I believe you will see a wonderful entity known as Beachview and Beachview 1 and Beachview 2. And Mr. Speaker, if it weren't profitable, I don't think Beachview 2 would have been created, sir. So there are opportunities. When I heard about the bridge, Mr. Speaker, I said, well, this is a wonderful opportunity for investor or investors and certainly the people of the city of Bridgetown to benefit from, Mr. Speaker. So that, Mr. Speaker, I can imagine a city of Bridgetown with cafes, Mr. Speaker, with redeveloped properties. For example, the Pierhead area. And I can imagine not only a Bridgetown, sir, but if you were to start from the south coast, from the Savannah Hotel, and you are coming all along that stretch, Mr. Speaker, past Bay Street, Mr. Speaker, come into the city of Bridgetown itself, and you go all the way down there if you're going to Paradise, I can begin to realize the potential that we have for unlocking Barbados' future potential. Mr. Speaker, with a refurbished Empire Theatre, well, soon for now, Mr. Speaker, I don't even believe we will walk into the city of Bridgetown, believe where are we in a matter of years, Mr. Speaker. But I thought it is the foresight, it is the planning of a government, Mr. Speaker, that has come to work, understood the challenges that lie before us, Mr. Speaker, but a government that is committed with the men and women on this team, sir, to ensure that we do what we have to do within the confines of the law, sir, to ensure that we build our capacity. So that I can imagine, like I said, a refurbished Empire Theatre with access to all Barbadians, Mr. Speaker. I can see a wonderful strip, and Mr. Speaker, I can even see opportunities across the street from the strip that would give us a wonderful opportunity. I see redeveloped businesses in Barbados, a place where people will want to come to Bridgetown, not only by taxi, sir, but at the rate we're going, we will see them coming in by a water taxi, Mr. Speaker. These are opportunities for our people. And that is why, sir, it gives me great pleasure, sir, to support this resolution. Because this resolution will create jobs for our people. Yes, it will create infrastructure development, but it will also help us, sir, to improve our foreign reserves. It will give us a chance to get some much-needed revenue, sir, so that we can reduce, sir, as we go along. And as a government, we intend to, sir, come July, and then next year, sir, when tax reform takes care of itself, people of Barbados will begin to see what the Barbados Labour Party is about. It's been a difficult road, but we signed up for the job, Mr. Speaker. And we did so because we have this country's interests at heart. And because we have this country's interests at heart, sir, we are going to work overtime to make sure that Barbados never ever goes back to where it was, almost on the precipice of despair, Mr. Speaker. We are going to pull it back. And I've said before, this Barbados Labour Party has always been the party to respond to the plight of the people in a positive way. We've always had to pick up economies in shambles, Mr. Speaker. We've always had to pick up situations that were lost and restore hope to the people. And I know that for some people, it appears as though it is not coming as fast, Mr. Speaker. But I say to you that your government has shielded you from a lot more taxation than the others did, Mr. Speaker. That your government is on path for a successful future, Mr. Speaker. That your government has your interests at heart, Mr. Speaker. And I say to you, sir, that as I listen to my colleagues, as I see the plans being unfolded in here, sir, and outside of this place, sir, Mr. Speaker, I say to you that I see men and women hard at work, working on behalf of this country. And I, Mr. Deputy Speaker, and I have to apologize because I keep calling you Mr. Speaker.
I understand.
But Mr. Deputy Speaker, we all want the best for Barbados. We are committed to being the best, sir. We have set ourselves some high standards, sir. But I'm confident, Mr. Speaker, that over the life of this term, that the people of Barbados will see that we've been to work and we've worked hard in your best interest. So on that point, Mr. Speaker, I really want to compliment the work of the Minister of Housing. I also want to say that as I listen to the Honourable Member for the City of Bridgetown, he's very passionate. And I'm sure that a lot of the benefits that will unfold to the people of the City of Bridgetown, Mr. Speaker. Sir, and I've said before, the Minister of Tourism, he knows what he's about. He has capable advisors around him, sir. And these opportunities, and I can't help but say, these opportunities will also help us in no small measure to increase airlift capacity to Barbados. Because rest assured, once you create inventory, Mr. Speaker, you will have airlift into Barbados. And as long as the Barbados Tourism Marketing Agency, the Minister, and all the players continue to put in the effort that they're putting in, sir, I know that this country will have a successful future. I believe in this country, Mr. Speaker, and I know that the team that I am proud to be associated with, this wonderful 80-plus year institution known as the Barbados Labour Party, will continue to deliver in its very own motto, Mr. Speaker. We intend to ensure we have and give the people a better life. I'm obliged to you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. Member for St. Andrew.
Mr. Speaker, I would like to thank all members who have contributed to this debate. The Honourable Member for St. Michael West did not raise any issues that warrant any reply from me, because the reply from me that warrants his address, I really cannot give that reply in here. It is unfortunate, though, that the Honourable Member has chosen this debate to openly attack members on this side, namely the member for St. Peter, the member for St. George North, and the member for St. George South, and the member for St. James Central. You know, as he spoke, I recall as a little boy, there was a pastor in a district near to where I was, and every time he got up to speak, he used to talk about hypocritical quackery. And he would repeat this notion of hypocritical quackery at every speech. Eventually, he left one church and he went to another church, and his hypocritical quackery came out when he was expelled from that church. I would hope that the same fate does not actually come to the honourable member for St. Michael West. And because there are certain things that he did say, I'm glad that the member for St. George North, St. George South did reveal, it didn't even occur to me with the manifesto that we had all signed on that document. And a signature is a funny thing. You can't get away from a signature. And everything that he attacked, the honourable member for St. Michael West, was in there. You can't sign on to something. You can't sign the conveyance and then claim that it was not your signature. His signature is on that document. And the thing about it is, Mr. Deputy Speaker, when you speak, and you speak in terms of development and the continuation of a development, even from a former government, and you speak in terms as though it was our signature, the particular development, and that even if the development was the signature of someone else, that you should not necessarily blindly follow that development. I am sort of heartened by the words of the Honourable Member of St. Peter, who spoke to the art of development that you need in times like these, but not necessarily development at any cost. And it is indeed, it is very interesting that the member for St. Peter should have spoken in those terms, and notwithstanding that, be attacked. But such is life. But just as an example of the type of development that we have decided to continue, if you take Coverley as a classic example, and the honourable member should note that, the honourable member St. Michael West, we came to government, there are a number of contracts. You can't just come because you have won a government and decide to undo everything that a past government has done. Government doesn't work that way. And the honourable member should know better. He should be fully aware of that. Coverley, we came and we found an agreement with the last government. As a matter of fact, there's nothing by the name of a last government because the government is a continuum. But there are certain provisions in that contract that we found somewhat mind-boggling. But we yet, notwithstanding the fact that it was carved in stone, contract for the building of 1,076 houses, whereby the National Housing Corporation got just $3,000 for each house. At the completion of that contract, the government would have been able would have got $12 million, and it was a project which we felt that did not even represent half the amount that we should have got. We didn't seek to repudiate, to abandon the contract just like that. We sat down with the developer. The developer recognized at the time, that he was, I wouldn't say that he was unfair in the government of Barbados, although I don't know how else to put it. But he was in a situation where, at the end of the contract period, he would be a multi-millionaire and multi-billionaire. But we sat down and we negotiated with him because we still had a card to play. And we were able to get an additional $4 million in the final analysis. So even that alone, the Coverley project, from $12 million to $16 million, of course, there are certain things we could not have done anything about. There was a 99-year lease at $100 a month, and you go up to Coverley, and you look at the amount of buildings and the amount of business on that particular site. All government is getting $100 a month for lease for all of that property. A year, sorry. $100 a year, thank you for $100 a year. Unbelievable. You couldn't get a contract like that anywhere else. But at least we could negotiate with respect to the building, the construction of the houses, but we couldn't do anything with the lease. Couldn't do anything with the lease. But the development continued, but it didn't continue, to use the language of the honourable member for St. Peter, at any cost. It continued at our cost. So, Mr. Speaker, with those few remarks, as I said, I welcome I thank the honourable members for their contribution, and I move that this resolution do now pass.
Seconded. All members in favour say aye. Those against say no. I think the ayes have it. This resolution no pass.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, I beg to move the suspension of this sitting until 5 p.m.
Second. The question is that this House be suspended until 5 p.m. today. All members in favor say aye. Those suspended. Suspended, not adjourned. Till 5 o'clock. He moved suspension. Okay.
It's a matter of some disrespect, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Now, this is the second time for the day we are having an unexpected suspension of proceedings. And I want to give credit to the Honourable Leader of the House, who in his very gentlemanly manner has privately said to me why we have had to suspend debate. But given the tone of discussion today, Mr. Deputy Speaker, I will not let this pass without making the comment that it really should be said to us why we're having these repeated suspensions. And if we're having difficulty getting matters in their documented form to this honorable chamber, we really ought to adjourn the House and come again.
I've been in this House longer than most. And the question of having a suspension like this has happened during the last government on one occasion 5 times. I mean, the honourable member has not been here very long, and he normally comes in and leaves, and he will probably, at the end of 5 years, he will go back to where he was. So he doesn't know what transpired in the last 10 years. But this is something that was happening all the time, and I'm not saying that because it happened all the time that it is something that we should continue. But there are certain delays that are caused not so much by us in here, but the machinery of government. It is part of it.
Continue to marvel at this honourable member's apparent lack of ability to understand simple English language. My issue is not the suspension, even in this repeated fashion. I simply said, give an explanation to this House. There are people listening to these proceedings out here, outside of this House. This morning, at the first suspension, my office received a call from a media house wanting to know what was going on. It is in the interest of the government's credibility and image I'm raising this issue.
Members, all I will say is that suspension is a matter of management tool for government, where sometimes under the standing orders, suspension is necessary for good management of the affairs of government. The question is that this House be suspended until 5 p.m. today. All members in favor say aye. Those against say no. I think the ayes have it. House is now suspended until 5 p.m. today. Thank you.